Hello, BookTube. A short while ago, Matthew at Mayberry Book Club did a tag about me. You may have seen it going the rounds on BookTube. He looked around his library and asked himself a question that probably some of you have asked. I wonder if Steve has read these books. And the reason why he might ask that about me and maybe not about some other people that he knows is that I have read an enormous amount in my life. I read an average of 10 hours a day. I read an average of 150 pages an hour. I do almost nothing else. It's now and has been for quite some time my profession. So I take care of Frida. I play with Frida. I cuddle with Frida. And before that, I took care of I had two sweet old dogs. But other than that, I mostly spend my time aggressively, enthusiastically reading. And I have been for a long time. Even before I had gotten back into reviewing, I still read an enormous amount every day. The numbers hardly changed at all, except that the average number of pages per hour that I read has gone up a little as I get back into what I would have to say is pretty good reading shape. So it raises a natural question, not just on BookTube, but IRL, in my real life. It raises a natural question among people. Well, I'm looking at this book on my shelf or at the library sale or at a bookstore. I wonder if Steve has read this. And more to the point of this has Steve read it tag. And a point that I'm happy to report everyone in our little corner of BookTube has immediately intuitively understood. More to the point is, what did Steve think of it? Whether he's read it, or even if he hasn't read it, what does he think about the author, or what does he think about the chances that he will read it, or the description of it, anything like that. I'm proud to report that in our little corner of BookTube, not the whole of BookTube, and not certainly the whole of YouTube, but our little corner of BookTube, this odd little group that we have, where we all like each other, we all get each other's sense of humor, we're all here to talk to each other, about 100 channels, I'd say. In this little group of BookTube, this weird little corner of BookTube, no one has misunderstood this tag. No one everyone has understood it the way Matthew intended it, which is fun. Purely fun. This is not caustic, this is not sneering, unless I do the sneering, in which case it's cute. And I think Matthew must have realized that, because instead of just making a video out of this, he made a tag, and it has gone viral, and a whole bunch of people have decided to do it and try their libraries. And the resulting videos have been incredible. Just incredible. Because, people have understood that in order to have a fighting chance of naming a book that I haven't read, they're going to have to go off the beaten path. I cover the beaten path for a living. And I have for a long time, and I'm doing it. I'm covering the beaten path while you're sound asleep in your bed with your good hygiene and your loving families. So you're going to have to go off the beaten path for the book to have a chance. And as a result, these videos have been wonderful collections of oddities, not just the booktubers. We are already a wonderful collection of oddities. But the books themselves, there have been so many books on these things, on these videos, these response videos, that you haven't ever seen before on BookTube. That has been incredible. And so I already knew that this was a powerful tag, because it's had the power, as all viral tags do, to get people moving, to get them up and looking at their bookshelves, and more importantly, to get bookish conversations started. So I knew that this was a powerful tag, but I didn't know that it had the power to raise the dead. And yet, the response video I'm making today, I'm doing a video response to every one of these things. I haven't done one yet for the guy who created the tag. I will. I promise I will. But I'm doing a video response for every one of these things, because leaving comments just isn't worth it. This is just too much fun. And the response I'm making today is one I never thought I would make. Matthew's tag was taken up by someone who hasn't made a BookTube video in a year. Perhaps some of you remember Barbells and Books. The title is a combination that doesn't often happen on BookTube. And he hasn't made a video in over a year, and he came back specifically to poke the bear. So I will leave a link to both of these, to Matthew's original and to Miles's response, and let's just go through his picks and see how well he does. Because inevitably this has turned into a contest to see who can get the highest number of books that Steve has not read. Matthew scored at 2. A few other people have scored at 2. A few people whose names we shall not mention in public have scored at 1. And there is a queen. There's a queen bee to this whole thing, and that is Hannah at Hannah's Books, who scored 4, including one of her own, which really ought to be bonus points. So let's see if Barbells and Books can deadlift Hannah out of her throne. So his first book is a yes for me, and that is Frisk by Dennis Cooper. I think this author is a genius, and I think the body of work that he has created is incredible. And if you don't know anything about him and you Google him quickly, you might see a tagline that says, that he's a gay author, writes gay-themed books. And you might think, oh, great, a gay author I've never heard of with a bunch of backlist. This will be fun. And, oh my, that tagline led you astray because Dennis Cooper he's not a gay author. He is, but he writes books the type of which I have never seen anywhere else. I think that he does it with genius. I don't think he relies on his unconventionality. I think that the unconventionality is merely the means by which he expresses his genius. But I do not recommend that you read him, because once you've read one of his books, you can't unread it. You can't get the images and the concepts in the book out of your mind once they're in there, and you're going to want to. So I'm in the odd position here, and Barbells and Books has read at least Frisk, so he must know what I'm talking about. He's probably nodding. And Adam at Memento Mori, if he ever sees this video, he will be nodding as well, because Dennis Cooper is one of those very rare authors where I can unquestionably call him a genius, and I can unquestionably refuse to recommend him to anyone. I do not recommend him to anyone. I don't know anyone that I recommend it to. Having just had a conversation with Miles, I would have assumed, no, this won't work. I couldn't recommend him to him, so that's great to be surprised. Then number 2 is also a yes. This is Agaat by Marlene van Niekerk. It's a novel set in apartheid South Africa, an older woman who has a young caretaker, and every element in it is set up perfectly for a wonderfully effective, moving book, and it isn't. It's a block of wood. It refuses to ignite. And that's a shame, at least for me, and at least the first time. I only read it once. So it's possible that if I encountered it and reread it, I might, I probably know more about the state of apartheid South Africa, the details of the society. I shouldn't need to know any more of those things. That's the author's job, not mine. But it's possible that if I read it again, I would like it a lot more. If I encounter it again, thanks to Barbells and Books, I will give it another try. That's the wonder of BookTube, right? Our little corner of BookTube is that we don't all have to agree with each other, but we stick in each other's minds. So the fact that he even mentioned this book, I don't think he enthusiastically recommended it. I think I detected a note of lukewarm in him as well. But even so, the fact that I've seen it just mentioned will probably prompt me to read it again the next time I encounter it. That's kind of what we do on BookTube, at least here. The higher tiers of BookTube, the glitzy ones, the ones that are going to be destroyed by COPPA, don't ever pay any attention to each other whatsoever, except when they're in person, when they're gathered together in person at Ham on Y, belly aching about the vermin in their comments field. Let's not get me started on that. I know you're all saying, once again, we did not get you started. You start yourself. Zip it. So the next one is an oddity in every one of these tags that people are doing. There's at least one book where I look at it and I say, okay, what on earth was this person? I know hope springs eternal, but what on earth was this person thinking? Even halfway hoping that I would not have read this book. It's just, there's been one like that, at least one, on every one of these tagged responses. And this one is the one for this response. This is A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Eimear McBride. It was an incredibly ballyhooed book, and of course I read it, and I really liked it. I really do recommend it. Like everybody else, I was struck by its stylistic gambles, and like most critics, I think, that I've talked to, I thought the stylistic gambles were backed up by talent. I thought they were actually worked. So it's not a customary reading experience, but you will really like it, I think. Then the next one is a no. It's Blood and Guts in High School by Kathy Acker. Never read it. The next one is a yes. This is O Fallen Angel by Kate Zambreno. It was her much ballyhooed debut, and because of that fact, I read it. I seem to remember kind of liking it, and Then the next one is also a yes, and the Chronology of Water by Lidia Yuknavitch. And I read it. It's a memoir, and I thought it was just boring. I didn't think it was technically bad, technically done, unless you count the ability to interest your reader as one of your technical duties as a writer. If you're old-fashioned enough to count that as a technical duty of your as a writer, then it technically is deficient because it didn't interest me in the slightest. Then the next one is a yes, and this is Problems by Jade Sharma. I thought it was terrific. About the main female protagonist has an utterly broken life, and yet is oddly optimistic. She is oddly upbeat at the oddest moments, and the voice that carries throughout the book is amazing. Problems might have been Jade Sharma's debut. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't make a note to myself here, but if I ever saw it again, I would gladly reread it. I strongly recommend it to you if you see it and are interested. Just read go on Goodreads and read the description. And if that interests you, just take my word for it that the execution is as intriguing as the description. So the author won't let you down. Then the next one is, of course, a yes. Because, of course, I am well attested on record as being a diehard Murakami fan. Ryu Murakami. This is Coin Locker Babies by Ryu Murakami. And it is full of the narrative energy, even in translation, the zest of word choice and sentence structure and pacing that is almost never to be found in Haruki Murakami. Coin Locker Babies was made in a very distinctive mass market paperback, I think by Kodansha Press here in America, probably 30 years ago. And I had that mass market. I read it a couple of times. If I wish I still had it. I know that I don't. I'm not even going to bother to tear the place apart. I know that I don't have Coin Locker Babies now in any format. And I wish that I did. So this is another one on this list. There are a few books on this list where hearing Miles talk about them makes me want to read them again. I would reread Coin Locker Babies if it came my way, especially in that old mass market. Then the next one is a no. It's House Rules by Heather Lewis. Never read it. And then the final one on the Barbells and Books edition of Has Steve Read It is Sea of Hooks by Lindsay Hill, which is a yes. I read it. I wasn't impressed by it in any way, about a man who has to, the endless 50,000th fictional protagonist who has to find himself. I want to say to these people, have you tried the Lost and Found at the concourse in Grand Central Station? Everything shows up there eventually. But it's like a lot of the books on this list. I read it, but I do not recommend it. Same thing with the Chronology of Water or Agaat. I've read all of those, but I don't recommend them. And same thing also in a way with Frisk by Dennis Cooper. I read it, but I cannot recommend it to you. I don't know who I would recommend it to. I would not have recommended it to Miles. I'd be fascinated to know the story of what led him to this book and why it appeals to him. But I think Dennis Cooper knows exactly what he's doing. I think he set out to strip away all of the pieties from the novel form without writing garbage, without writing porn, without writing trash. And I think he does that, and you might say, well, given the wide variety, the huge infinite variety of fiction, how could there be any universally recognized pieties? Surely every book strips away some of them. It's only until you read Dennis Cooper that you realize that you have not gone far enough in your thinking, and that there are plenty of givens that can be stripped away. And I've seen a number of critics over the years. Critics, my fellow book critics are some of the only people that I feel comfortable recommending this guy to, because they've already seen it all, and it's possible that if I turn one or two of them, he might start to get more acclaim. But I'm not sure that I'd want him to have more acclaim, and it's not going to happen anyway, because every critic I've ever shoved him on has read one of his books or part of one of his books and recoiled in horror and said, this is just snuff fiction. This is porn, and the worst kind, debased porn. So there's no literary merit here at all. So he'd be another one where I like him. He's an oddity on this list. I like him, but I can't recommend him any more than I can those other books. So that is it. That is the Barbells and Books edition. And if you were keeping track at home, you will see that that Barbells and Books did not hit a personal best. He did not hit a PR, a personal record, at this foray into the BookTube gym. In fact, he had 2 out of the books that he picked. Now, 2 is not the worst number. It's not the lowest number. 2 is not 1. 2 is not 0. But 2 is not 3, and we've had a couple at 3, and 2 is not 4, which is Hannah's all-time record. So Hannah is still the queen of the universe. So once again, for the 6th, I don't remember how many of these is. The 6th, I think this is the 6th response. Once again, Hannah gets a link. You get a link to Hannah's video because she is still the winner and champion of the universe. But that might not last. There are plenty more of these things to come. Plenty more. I'm going to try and do one pretty much every day. I will do my best. I think the next one on my list, I'm not making any punctilious effort to do them in order of upload. I'm doing them in order of when I notice them. And I think the next one I'm doing is Lukash at Totally Pretentious. So if any of you have, a $5 on him at Aqueduct for the 815, you want to belly up to your iPads and watch closely to see if the little brainiac can match Hannah or even exceed her total. But regardless of what happens, this particular edition of the Has Steve Reddit tag has made me realize that this tag has the power to raise the dead. And if that's true, who else might we hear from? Can you imagine it? Matthew at MCS Books has stopped making videos. What if he makes a video just to do this? Wouldn't that be awesome? What about Curtis? At Curtis Books and Books, probably a lot of you are so new to BookTube that you don't even remember him. Lukash remembers him. I remember him. We had a lot of fun with Curtis. What if he comes back to do this tag? And what about, talk about a name from the ancient past, what about Lindsay Ray? How many of you remember Lindsay Ray? Oh, Retired Book Nerd does. Joe does. But I don't know how many of the rest of you do. Old style booktuber. Fantastic channel. She wrapped up shop a few years ago. I promise I had nothing to do with it. And I believe she took down all of her videos. But my man, oh man, wouldn't it be wonderful if she came back to do this tag? Who knows? We'll see. These things this thing is continuing to move on and on. In fact, I just recently noticed that it has moved to the channels of some of the other members of the OGBG, the Old Geezers book group. Some of my fellow OGBG 4 Musketeers, only let's not raise our swords because my back's bothering me today. 4 members of our little quartet. 2 of them have turned on me and thrown their hats into the ring. It's only a matter of time until Jason Harrigan does, and then it's the moment you've all been dreading when the OGBG turns on itself. Anyway, first, Lukash. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.